Hello, my name is Dylan, and I'm a software JavaScript developer, and also the creator of the Rasengan.js project. In this video, I want to cover 4 points. The first one is to present you what motivated me to create that amazing React framework called Rasengan.js. Secondly, I will talk about the solution itself. Then I will move to the business model, and then I will finish with the future roadmap of the project. So without further ado, let's get started. Regarding the motivation, I started working on Rasengan.js on November 2023, and before that moment I was working on several projects using only React as a framework without using Next.js, for example. And I was seeing myself doing the same thing over time. For example, configuring the routing by myself, and when I need, for example, the SSL configuration in order to have a better SEO, I was doing it by myself, and it was so complicated for me to configure it by myself. But at that moment, again, I didn't want to use tools like Next.js or something else which already take care of SSL, which are which is very complicated to manage manually. But at that particular time, I wanted to challenge myself. That's why I decided to build Rasengan.js. At that moment, it was so, let's say, complicated for me because I didn't know exactly how to do that. But it was something like a challenge that I was um, giving to myself, and I decided to start working on it just like that. That was my first motivation. I wanted to cover my own needs in order to resolve my own problems. But after months of work, or let's say a year of work, my motivation has changed and I got a new vision. So currently, my motivation is to create a great ecosystem for the web that will allow developers to have the exact tools they need to build web applications. So let's take Rasengan.js like that ecosystem that provides everything that a developer needs to create beautiful web applications for the web. Okay, and Rasengan.js is just focused on the front end. It does not uh, handle the backend side like Django REST or tools like Nest.js or Laravel, things like that. Rasengan.js just focus on frontend, and what I wanted to create is to create a great ecosystem for the web where the developers will find the exact tools they need to create their front-end web applications. And I also want to avoid question like, is that package maintained, or is that package compatible with Rasengan.js? This kind of question will not be a problem with that ecosystem that I wanted to create, because everything will be maintained and will be supported for the Rasengan.js framework. So now let's talk about the solution itself. Rasengan.js is a modern React framework built on top of modern tools like React, Vite, and React Router. Rasengan.js provides many features like a built-in routing system, so that means Rasengan.js supports routing natively. You don't have to worrying about how to configure routing manually because it is already supported and provided by the framework. Rasengan.js also supports CSS in different way. The simple CSS files or preprocessor like SAS, LESS, Stylus, or tools like Tailwind CSS, Bootstrap, and so on. That means you have several possibility to add styles into your website. Rasengan.js also supports different rendering methods. We have the server-side rendering and also the client-side rendering. So depending on what you really want for your application, you can enable or disable one or other mode. And for example, the SSL mode is very useful when you want your application referenced on search engine like Google, Bing, and so on. So you have that possibility with Rasengan.js. And there are many other features that you can find on the documentation at rasengan.dev. And yeah, just go there and see exactly what the framework is provided to you. Rasengan.js comes with different packages. So the first one and the first important one is the CLI. When you want to create a new project, you don't have to do it manually by creating each files by yourself. Just use the CLI, run the commands, and get exactly the, the initial project on which you can start directly on and start working on it. So the CLI is really important because you will have the base configuration, the base structure of your project on which you can start. And there are some other package like for the images, for theme, for internationalization, and also adapters. Yeah, adapters are very important when it comes to host your application online. And currently there are two adapters available. One for Node in order to host your application on your custom server, a VPS one, or if you really want to host your application on Vercel, for example, there is also an adapter for Vercel. And in the next, let's say, months and years, we will have more adapters like for Vercel, Cloudflare, AWS, EC2, and so on. So things are good things are coming. So, what about the business model? What you have to know first is Rasengan.js is an open source project and it is free of use. You don't have to purchase anything in order to use it. If you have an idea of an application you want to build for the web, for example, you can decide freely to use Rasengan.js and build your application, ship it online, and yeah, starting having users, clients, and so on. There is no way or there is no purchase that you have to make first. Okay. Rasengan.js is open source and free to use. The only things I put on this project is the sponsor mechanism. So people who want to support the project can just support me by going to my buy me a coffee page and yeah, support me there. And the link is on the documentation at rasengan.dev. Yeah, on the navbar you have the link that will redirect you to the buy me a coffee platform. So that's it for the business model. Everything is free, the project is open source, there is nothing to purchase. Before talking about the future roadmap, I want to tell you that I have released the version 1.1.0 on 16 August 2025. And that release was include the file-based routing in order to directly configure the routing based on the organization of your files into your application, like Next.js, or other frameworks does. And also I have added the package responsible for internationalization into the Rasengan.js project. This was the release I made recently. But for the future roadmap, I have many ideas that I will put inside the framework. For example, implementing the static site generation in order to have, let's say, after the build of the project, only the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript that we can host on a simple CDN provider in order to avoid, let's say, a server at in production. So hosting a website without relying on a server, for example. This can be a great feature that I could add into the project. But there are other things I'm planning to do, and things will come, let's say, iteratively, and yeah, that's it. And also I also plan to work on, let's say, other projects that I could sell later, but actually I want to focus on the the framework itself in order to have something very performant, something very great that developers could use nicely and build their application. Yeah, so that's what I that's what I wanted to do in the future.